Hi, I'm Mickey Fulp, the mercenary geologist, here with Amir Adnani, Uranium Energy Corp CEO, and we're starting season 2 of this series.
Unbelievable.
How you doing? Yeah.
I'm doing great, Mickey. Good to see you. Happy
Good to see
PDAC.
you. Happy PDAC.
Time flies. It feels like yesterday we decided we should get together and record something like this and make it a nice conversation. And here we are a year later, right? And we've been all over the place over the last year.
We have. We've been in Vancouver, we've been in San Francisco, started in Toronto, and now we're back in Toronto again.
We're back to Toronto again, and it's been a very busy 12 months.
It
a lot
has.
happening in the world and a lot happening in uranium land.
In the world of uranium, why don't you talk a little bit about the world of uranium and what I consider one of the big issues in the United States right now, and that's national security with respect to uranium supply.
Well, as an entrepreneur, what really got me excited, what was 13 years ago now, to get into the uranium business was looking at how over-dependent the US market was at the time, 13 years ago, on imports of uranium.
Right.
I think at the time I remember looking at it, and 90% of US requirements were being imported or sourced from other supplies than just mining from domestic
And
mines.
that 10% that the US actually produced was mainly at that time coming from the Russian megatons to megawatts program, plus
Very
Canada, #1, and Australia, #2. This has all changed in the
interesting, yeah.
last 12 or 13 years.
Good thing you bring up HEU, because sometimes we tend to forget about that. We don't talk about it anymore. But at the time, it was the biggest source of supply in the market. The dismantling of Russian or Soviet-era warheads and taking highly enriched uranium and blending it down into low-enriched uranium, that was producing the equivalence of 24 million pounds. That would have been, it wasn't a mine, but it was as though it was the world's biggest uranium mine. So
True.
It was a fascinating dynamic that we had then. And so here we are today. The amount of uranium being mined from US sources is meeting only 2% of US reactor requirements. 2%.
That's criminal in my opinion.
It's wrong at so many levels.
Wrong.
And
That's a better way to say it. That's just wrong.
I've been. It's interesting because I've been really also noticing over the last few months. You've got in the U.S., for example, Secretary Perry and the Department of Energy, and other kind of aspects of government as well, are all advocating for how valuable and strategic the 99 reactors that are operating in the U.S. are. The Department of Energy ran a great video recently that was on Twitter and everywhere saying, we're proud of our 99 reactors. They're generating 60% of our carbon-free electricity. This is vital to base load power. And I mean, this wasn't, I actually did this. I sent them a message saying, well, what about the uranium to run these 99 reactors? It's one thing to be so proud of this incredible infrastructure. The U.S. has the largest nuclear fleet in the world for power generation.
By far.
By far. And yet, again, there's this incredible overdependence on imports. And I don't think any industry, whether it was t-shirt making or making pens or pencils, whatever it was, you got to have the raw materials to make that sector more viable in terms of supply chain management. Right. And the supply chain starts with the main ingredient, the fuel. So anyways, I agree with you. I think this is now becoming an issue of energy security and national security in the US, this overdependence. I think it's a serious issue. And it's a serious issue because, again, we're at a time where there's geopolitical tension in the world. You have issues and desire by the governments of China and India to develop their own nuclear power program, to build nuclear reactors. The last thing on their mind is to worry about supplying uranium to the US utilities because there's a global market for nuclear expansion. And you and I were just talking about Saudi Arabia, for example. So I think the dynamics in the US is something to really pay attention to in 2018. I'd be very interested a year from now when we do season 3 of this discussion where the dynamics around US uranium mining industry is going to end up.
So one of my concerns right now is, we mentioned before, it came from the Russians and they were dismantling atom bombs, was coming from Canada and Australia. Now a big portion of it is coming from Kazakhstan.
Right.
Not especially a stable or an honest government, if you will. Plus Russia, and we've realized recently, or in the last 2 or 3 years, that even after the Cold War, Russia's not our friend. So what do you think the U.S. is going to do about perhaps helping U.S. uranium producers or encouraging some of this uranium to come out of the U.S. now for supplying reactors?
Let me just sort of, let me present the position that I'm in and my company is in, Uranium Energy, in the sense that Uranium Energy is a U.S. company. We're based in Corpus Christi. We have our offices in Vancouver as well, our administrative offices, but we're a U.S. company, U.S. listed for the last 13 years, building U.S. assets. The chairman of our company is former U.S. Energy Secretary Spencer Abraham.
Right.
Our executive VP, Scott Melby, who you've met, was the former president of the Uranium Producers of America.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we understand better than any other company both the geopolitical issues and the strategic elements of why, again, a vibrant uranium mining industry is needed, is vital to having a stable base of fuel and supply for these 99 nuclear reactors over here. We now have, as Energy Secretary, Rick Perry, who we know as a company, and I know personally very well because he was the governor of Texas for all the years for us as a Texas company. We permitted uranium mines and built and operated uranium mines. I can tell you that I think there is an incredibly different attitude in Washington, D.C. now and at the Department of Energy in recognizing how strategic uranium is for, again, clean, carbon-free, sort of emission-free electricity generation. If we want to decarbonize the economy at the same time as meeting growing electricity demands, with electric vehicles. Everyone wants to drive an electric vehicle. I mean, there's so much pressure on the grid to produce and generate more electricity. We need reliable sources, and you're not going to get a more reliable source than uranium coming from Texas and Wyoming than, let's say, overseas in Central Asia or whatever the country might be. And we're not trying to pick on anyone, but I think the point is that the best available supply sources could be low-cost in-situ recovery from your own backyard, from places like Texas and Wyoming that are energy capitals. Look at the oil business. Who would have ever thought 10, 15 years ago the oil can go from having 60% of its requirements imported to leading the world when it comes to technological innovation, production, and being number one.
We're now the largest oil producer, petroleum products producer in the world, and it's not long that we're going to be exporting more oil than we import. Now it's a world trade, so they go back and forth. And we, at one time back in about 1970, we exported uranium all over the world. So certainly we have the deposits. We have giant, high-grade underground deposits. We have ISR-ready deposits, in situ recovery, and you have them in Texas, and now you have them in Wyoming that basically turn on the switch in Texas whenever we get the price we need, or the U.S. government does something to encourage domestic producers.
You're absolutely right, and I mean, as a geologist, you've worked all over the place. You've been to these projects. You know the projects in Texas, New Mexico, Wyoming, elsewhere. So yeah, I think the potential is there in the U.S. to lead production higher. And I really believe with what we're doing at Uranium Energy, we're set up for that. We're setting up to lead U.S. production.
I will agree with that. That's why I'm a shareholder, long-term committed shareholder, and I intend to continue to be. We just need a little higher uranium price.
We need a higher uranium price. But I mean, I think if I just go back to that for a second, I was speaking with someone about this earlier today, but in 2005, when we set up our company in South Texas, we had this vision based on the data that we had analyzed and looked at, that there was going to be great potential to find new uranium deposits in South Texas. And everyone would say to me, what, uranium in Texas? Never heard of that. No one had ever heard of that. Here we are 13 years later, and in the last couple of years, the US Geological Survey has published 2 separate studies studying and identifying how significant the potential is in Texas and in South Texas for uranium projects and deposits that haven't been discovered yet, calling it one of the least explored provinces for uranium potential, that South Texas geologic sort of belt and uranium belt. And so you look at the fact that we've spent over a decade putting together historic data, drilling our own basically exploratory and resource delineation holes, permitting projects, owning the Hobson processing plant, which gives us infrastructure advantage to process our own uranium. Last year, we were the only uranium company in the US that drilled 130 exploratory holes at our Brook Hollow project. Actually exploring for uranium and expanding our resources, despite the fact that the uranium price is low and out of favor, we've managed to find a way to finance these activities, have very supportive shareholders. This year, we will continue drilling at our Brook Hollow project. We will probably this year also be the only company that's actually doing exploratory drilling. And the exploratory drilling we did last year at Brook Hollow led to an increased resource report at Brook Hollow.
Well,
I mean, so,
yeah.
so
that's why you're doing it.
And that's it. So not only are we doing it, but we're actually able to, again, use the data and the know-how, and it's a fantastic testament of our team. And the individuals that we have running our various activities, from geology to mining or whatnot, people that are probably the last remaining human resource layer in the uranium mining business. The uranium mining business used to employ 30,000 people, 30,000. Today it's less than 500.
Wow.
And that a good chunk of that, you know, in terms of some of the most experienced hands, is what we've really tried to hold on to and keep for many years now as part of our team. And I think the human capital is such an important part of it, because it has gotten so thin. How could, you know, the part of the ramp up is going to be also needing to replenish the human resource side of the US uranium business. And so I'm really excited about the fact that this is a great time to be drilling and expanding resources. And this is also a great time to be making acquisitions. As you know, last year we made 1 acquisition in Wyoming. This year we're in the process of closing another acquisition in Wyoming. Last year we bought Reno Creek. This year we're in the process of buying North Reno Creek.
Yep.
It'll be consolidated into one of the biggest projects in Wyoming, pre-production, but fully permitted. And so we're very committed to this vision. We are very committed to the vision that we want to put in place the building blocks. Right now at Hobson, we have 2 million pound physical capacity. We have a 2 million pound per year production license at Reno Creek. That right there gives us the building block to get to 4 million pounds per year. Our vision, again, is to lead US production higher.
And that's about 4 times what's going to be the U.S. total production was in 2017. So uranium's coming. We both know that. And I thank you for the time sitting down with me again. Folks, Uranium Energy Corp, I'm a long-term shareholder. I'm committed. We talked, we see uranium coming. It's probably a contrarian move right now, but consider UEC, Uranium Energy Corp, for your speculative resource portfolio. Ciao for now.